dear students, myself Gangadhar Solanke, and I welcome you all to the MCGM's virtual classroom. My dear students, today in Standard 8th History, we will be learning the topic Beginning of Freedom Movement. Our first chapter was Sources of History, then Europe and India, Effects of British Rule, the Freedom Struggle of 1857, and the last chapter which we learned was Social and Religious Reforms. And now the sixth topic, Beginning of Freedom Movement. English education made mixed effects on the Indian society, and the seeds of nationalism was sown by the reforms of newly educated society. The concept of nationalism was there in the society, and it was because of the education, or the English education we can say, due to various movements in the different parts of India. A favorable situation was created to build a political organization on an all India level, which will be bring together the various provincial political organizations, different groups of politically aware people, and to express the aspiration of the nation by diverting the public attention towards the questions of the nation. Now here in this topic we are going to discuss about the concept of nationalism, how it was emerged in the minds of the people. नहीं तो उससे पहले क्या होता था कि लोग अपना अपना सोचते थे, अगर राजा है तो अपने प्रोविंस के बारे में सोचते थे. बट बिकॉज ऑफ द इंग्लिश एजुकेशन इट वॉज चेंज, मिक्स्ड इफेक्ट्स वर देयर, पॉजिटिव ऑल्सो एंड निगेटिव ऑल्सो, बट public attention was diverted towards the questions of the nation. So now in this topic, the first point, centralization of administration during British rule. Due to the British administration, its implementation on India brought the nation under one roof in its true sense, and due to identical reforms all over the country and equality before law, the feeling of nationalism developed among the people. Now people were one in front of the law and also for education. So the convenience of administration and swift movement of the army, the British built network of roads and railways. But these facilities benefited the Indians as well. ब्रिटिशर्स ये सारी सुविधा ला रहे थे, एजुकेशन ला रहे थे ताकि उनको फ़ायदा हो, उनको रोड्स और रेलवेज से ट्रांसपोर्टेशन में आज़ादी हो, आसानी हो, लेकिन इसका फ़ायदा इंडियंस को भी होता रहा. People from different parts of India came in contact of each other, जो पहले उतना नहीं आते थे. There was increase in communication and feeling of nationalism grew up, and there the people started thinking about the nation. Economic exploitation, as we know, the British company or the British government was there only for the exploitation of the country. The Indian wealth was flowing towards England by all means. एक भी ऐसी चीज़ नहीं थी कि जिससे हमारी वेल्थ हमारे देश में रहे, किसी भी तरह से पूरा पैसा बाहर ही जा रहा था. And that is why the sentence is there. The Indian wealth was flowing towards England by all means, and due to the imperialist policy of England, there was beginning of economic exploitation of India, and for that farmers were compelled to take cash crops, because these cash crops were benefited for the British government, and that's why it is compulsory for the farmers. Burden of land taxes, continuous famines, all these broke down the backbone of Indian agriculture. Traditional industries declined, which lead to rise in unemployment. The capitalist, on the other hand, exploited the worker class. It means that the agriculture जो है वो भी टूट गया और कैपिटलिस्ट जो थे वो भी वर्कर क्लास को एक्सप्लॉइट कर रहे थे. Various new taxes were imposed on the middle class, and this led to growth of discontent among the people. People come together because of all these things. Western education. Due to spread of Western education, new ideas such as justice, liberty, equality, democracy, etc. were introduced to the Indians, which were very new to the Indians after long period. Rationalism, scientific attitude, humanity, nationalism, and these principles were accepted by the Indians, and therefore they are inculcated a feeling that we are capable of carrying out the work of the country. देश के लोगों को ऐसा लगा कि हमारे देश की एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन जो है या फिर देश चलाने के कैपेबल हम हैं, and its progress is possible by following these principles. India is a country of diverse languages. As we know, number of languages are there, and because of that our culture is different in the different parts of country. But with the introduction of English language, India got a new medium of communication. In this study of ancient Indian history also played an important role. The Asiatic Society was established at Bengal by the British. Many Indian and Western scholars started study of Indian culture. The manuscripts in Sanskrit, Persian, and other languages were examined, and research was published. Because of English education, people started studying our culture also, and also gave their research papers. In these, Dr. Bhaudaji Lad and Dr. R.G. Bhandarkar, these Indian scholars, made intensive study of ancient Indian culture. After understanding that we are blessed with glorious ancient tradition, ये सब पढ़ने के बाद पता चला बहुत सारे रिसर्चर्स को और कॉमन लोगों को भी कि हमारी कल्चर ही ग्लोरियस कल्चर है. The Indians were awakened with a sense of identity, and then the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute is working since last 100 years in Pune in the field of Indian history or in the field of research. Next point, contribution of newspapers, always very important because it is the fourth pillar of democracy, as we say. But during the period of modern India, or we can say during British government rule, newspapers played very important role in awakening the people. During this period, English and vernacular newspapers and periodicals came to be published. Through these newspapers, political and social awakening took place. Not only political but social awakening also. There were a number of articles based on the social issues and also political things or political activity. Newspapers like Darpan, Prabhakar, Hindu, Amrit Bazar Patrika, Kesari, then the Maratha started criticizing the government. और न्यूज़पेपर में किसी एक न्यूज़ को पढ़ने के बाद, किसी एक पॉलिटिकल घटना को पढ़ने के बाद लोगों का माइंडसेट उस तरह से बन जाता था कि ये जो गवर्नमेंट है इट इज़ for the exploitation. Establishment of Indian National Congress, the important step in the history of India. On 28 December 1885, the first session of Indian National Congress was held at Gokul Das Tejpal Sanskrit School in Mumbai. 72 delegates from different provinces of India participated in this session, and Umesh Chandra Banerjee, a renowned lawyer from Kolkata, was the president. Umesh Chandra Banerjee was the president of this session. In this session, they established the Indian National Congress. Alan Octavian Hume, a British officer, took initiative or took lead, we can say, in the establishment of the Indian National Congress. Increased proportion of Indians in the administration, reduction of military expenses by the British government. Such statements were sent to the British. Now, establishment of Indian National Congress, but the question is why establishment of Indian National Congress, or the objectives of the Indian National Congress. Here you can see the picture of the first Indian National Congress, 1885. Umesh Chandra Banerjee and Alan Octavian Hume. Objectives of the Indian National Congress: to make the people from different parts of India forget the differences. Differences in what? In religion, in race, in caste, in language, in geographical territories, and bring them on a common platform, that is of India. To understand each other's problem and views, to increase the feeling of oneness, which one was very important while struggling the British government. So, feeling of oneness among the people and to take efforts for the development of the country were the objectives of the Indian National Congress. Moderate phase. The early 10 years after establishment of Indian National Congress, their contribution was very slow but consistent. The leaders of Indian National Congress were realistic. We are talking about the qualities of the leaders of Indian National Congress of that period. Were realistic and highly educated. They were aware that through organized work, a strong foundation needs to be built up. Western thinkers, philosophy, liberalism, freedom, equality, fraternity, these values had an impact on them. They believed in constitutional methods, and that's why each and every step of the leaders of Indian National Congress was followed by the constitutional way. They had a hope that if we demand through constitutional methods, then the British will give justice to our demands, and in that Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Firoz Shah Mehta, Surendranath Banerjee were all moderate leaders. In the session of Indian National Congress, different resolutions were put forward by them, such as to get representation in provincial legislature, jobs for educated Indians, cutting down the increasing expenses on military, legislature and judiciary should be separated for safeguarding legal rights of Indians. But to cause a split in the national movement, the British implemented the policy of divide and rule. And that's why we are going to talk about the point extremist phase. All Indian leaders who were politically aware kept aside their differences of caste, religion, language, province, and gathered on a single platform, that is of Indian National Congress. But there were unanimous decisions regarding the objectives of the Congress and taking forward the movement by constitutional means, but there were differences regarding the working system, and these were ideological differences. On the basis of these ideological differences, two main political groups were formed. One, the moderates, who advocated the peaceful एंड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मैनर. इन्हें ऐसा लगता था कि शांति से अपनी जो भी मांगे हैं वो सरकार के सामने रखनी चाहिए, उनको पेपर्स देने चाहिए. और एक था एक्सट्रीमिस्ट हु बिलीव्ड इन सिवियर स्ट्रगल फॉर अटेनमेंट ऑफ फ्रीडम. उन्हें लगता था कि नहीं, इतने शांति से और आराम से बात करके कुछ फ़ायदा नहीं है, हमें एक्सट्रीम एक्शन लेना चाहिए. So in this, Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak and Bipin Chandra Pal were believed to be extremist leaders. In the early period, the extremist leaders, for bringing political awakening among the Indians, used methods like newspapers, national festivals and national education. So in this, newspapers through which Lokmanya Tilak made severe criticism on the suppressive policy of the British, and in Bengal province, Amrit Bazar Patrika was a mouthpiece of extremist ideology. But then Tilak started organizing of Shiv Jayanti and Ganesh Utsav for political reasons. If people come together, then government will ban them. So एक दूसरा रास्ता उन्होंने निकाला था. रिलीजियस रीजन्स के लिए अगर लोग इकट्ठा होते हैं तो गवर्नमेंट उन्हें बैन नहीं कर सकती थी. इन द मंडाले प्रिजन, तिलक रोट गीता रहस्य. इट्स कोर वॉज फिलोसॉफी ऑफ कर्म योगा एंड स्ट्रेस्ड दैट पीपल शुड ऑलवेज बी इन एक्शन. सो द मॉडरेट्स लेड द फाउंडेशन ऑफ फ्रीडम. Moderates laid the foundation of freedom and the extremists carried forward the movement. Moderates ने foundation रखा और extremists ने उसको आगे लेकर चले गए. In 1897, in Pune, the epidemic of plague had spread on large scale. Hundreds of people died due to it. And during this period, an officer named Rand was appointed. The plague patients were searched out and oppressive measures were adopted. As a revenge, Safekar brothers assassinated Rand. The government tried to connect relation of Lokmanya Tilak with this conspiracy. After being unsuccessful, the government imprisoned Tilak with revenge. Next point. Partition of Bengal. As we know, the policy of British government, divide and rule. The British decided to use the policy of divide and rule to create a rift between Hindu-Muslim community, and for that, Viceroy Lord Curzon contributed to it. Bengal was a very large province, and to carry out the work of this province was difficult from administrative point of view. ये एक रीज़न बता के, by putting up this reason, in 1905 he declared the partition of Bengal. With this partition, arrangement was made such that majority Muslims were divided due to partition. So the Muslims will remain in East Bengal and West Bengal for majority of Hindus. The hidden strategy of the British was, if the Hindu-Muslim were divided due to partition, then the freedom movement will be weakened. उसका ये मानना था कि एक बार ये पार्टीशन हो गया तो एक हिस्से में ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हिंदू रहेंगे, एक हिस्से में ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा मुस्लिम रहेंगे, और इनको ही आपस में अगर लड़वाते हैं तो हमसे आज़ादी लेने की जो मिशन स्टार्ट है वो वीक हो जाएगी. एंटी पार्टीशन मूवमेंट. There was public awakening against the partition, not only in Bengal but all over India. 16 October, the day of partition, was observed as National Mourning Day, and all over India there were protest meetings to condemn the government's decision. In this, Vande Mataram came to be sung everywhere as a symbol of unity. Raksha Bandhan programs were held. Students in large number boycotted government schools and colleges and participated in the movement. The leadership of this movement was in the hands of Surendranath Banerjee, Anand Mohan Bose, Rabindranath Tagore and such other leaders. The extent of Indian National Congress increased due to this, and it became a national movement. Owing to the severity of dissatisfaction, the British annulled the partition of Bengal. Then the 4-point program of Indian National Congress, here the word Swaraj. Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who was the president of Indian National Congress, session of 1905, and then the Dadabhai Nauroji, who first time pronounced the word Swaraj from the stage. So if we talk about the 4-point program of Indian National Congress, there we are having the words or the concepts of Swaraj, Swadeshi, national education and boycott. This 4-point program was unanimously accepted by the Indian National Congress, and due to Swadeshi movement will be self-sufficient. To follow the path of Swadeshi, we need to bring together capital, resources, manpower and such other forces, and from this the benefit of the country could be achieved. Then by boycotting, it was decided that boycotting of foreign goods is the first step and boycott of foreign rule will be the next step. पहले जो विदेशी सामान है उसको बॉयकॉट करेंगे और उसके बाद जो विदेशी सरकार है उन्हें यहाँ से निकाल देंगे. So Swaraj, Swadeshi, national education and boycott. Suppression of the British. The differences between the ideologies of Indian National Congress rose to great extent, and because of all these things, after anti-partition movement, the government was disturbed looking at the influential public protest, and that's why holding of public meetings was legally banned. Strict punishments were given to those who broke the law. School children were also beaten up. इसका मतलब हमें यहाँ पे ये समझना है कि हमारी आज़ादी के लिए, अभी आप लोग जो ये हिस्ट्री पढ़ रही हो, आपके ही एज के बच्चों ने ब्रिटिशों से मार खाया है. दिस इज द सेंटेंस. स्कूल चिल्ड्रन वर आल्सो बीटन अप. Many restrictions were imposed on newspapers. Many printing press were confiscated on grounds of blame of criticizing the government. Writers and editors were imprisoned. Strict actions were taken against the extremist leaders, and this led to a severe reaction in Bengal. Now the next point, establishment of Muslim League. The British became very disturbed looking at the overwhelming response to the Indian National Congress in the anti-partition movement. तो फिर से उन्होंने वही चाल चलने की कोशिश की, that is divide and rule. The British once again followed the policy of divide and rule, and they started using the propaganda that for safeguarding the interest of Muslims, they should have a separate political organization. And due to the motivation of the British government, a committee of upper class Muslims under the leadership of Aga Khan met Governor General Lord Minto, and due to the motivation from Lord Minto and other British officers, the Muslim League was established in 1906. So here one thing which is very important to understand, Indian National Congress जो बना उसमें भी मुस्लिम अधिकारी जो थे उनका ही मोटिवेशन था, एलन ऑक्टियम ह्यूम, और यहाँ पर भी वही हुआ, इस्टेब्लिशमेंट ऑफ मुस्लिम लीग में. Then the Minto Act, there was dissatisfaction among the Indians regarding the work of British government. The Indians felt that the reason of poverty in India was the economic policy of the British. क्योंकि इंडिया के लोग तो गरीब होते जा रहे थे, लेकिन ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट जो है वो अमीर होता जा रहा था, यहाँ से बहुत ज़्यादा पैसा बाहर जा रहा था. Oppressive policy of Lord Curzon, exclusion of educated Indians in government service, unjust behavior towards Indians in Africa, all this added to the dissatisfaction of the Indian people. And to solve this or to suppress this by using other way or other method, in 1909 the Minto Reform Act was passed, and according to this act it increased the number of Indian members in the Legislative Assembly, and provision of inclusion of some elected Indian representatives in Legislative Assembly was made. In the same act, separate electorates were provided to the Indian Muslims, and due to this conspiracy of the British, the seeds of division of India were sown. जैसे हिंदू मुस्लिम यूनिटी को तोड़ने का काम इन सारी चीज़ों ने किया. Next one, Lucknow Pact. In the Lucknow session of Indian National Congress in 1916, under the leadership of Lokmanya Tilak, an attempt was made to resolve the dispute in the Indian National Congress, and in the same year there was an arrangement between Indian National Congress and Muslim League which was known as the Lucknow Pact. Now according to this pact, the Indian National Congress agreed to separate electorates to Muslims, and Muslim League agreed to support the Indian National Congress in its work for getting political rights to India. तो दोनों में एक समझौता हुआ बिटवीन द मुस्लिम लीग एंड इंडियन नेशनल कांग्रेस में. Then the Home Rule movement. In 1914, when Lokmanya Tilak was released from the Mandale jail, the First World War had begun in Europe, and the direct consequences of this war had to be borne by Indian as well. So the rates of basic necessary commodities increased due to the war. Many restrictions were put up on the Indians by the British government, and this led to increased dissatisfaction in the minds of Indians. So in these circumstances, Dr. Annie Besant and Lokmanya Tilak started the Home Rule movement. Home Rule, which means self-government. On similar lines, Home Rule movement demanded right of self-government, and Annie Besant and Lokmanya Tilak made extensive tour in different parts of the country, and the demand for self-government reached the common people. Tilak firmly stated that Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it, which was very, very, very famous. First World War and India. The war atmosphere in Europe, growing dissatisfaction in the minds of Indians, and the popularity of Home Rule movement. In such conditions, it was necessary for the British to get cooperate from the Indians. अब उन्हें इंडियंस की मदद चाहिए थी, और उसके लिए उन्होंने अपनी स्ट्रैटेजी फिर से चेंज की. In 1917, Montagu, Secretary of State for India, declared that step by step Indians will be given the right to self-government and responsible political system. And for that, in 1919, the British Parliament passed another act to bring constitutional reforms in India. This act is known as Montagu-Chelmsford Reform Act. Now, what was this act? According to this act, less important departments were transferred to the Indian ministers, whereas the important departments like finance, home affairs and revenue were under the control of the governor. But it was started, we can say, धीरे धीरे शुरुआत हो गई कि कुछ ना कुछ तो इंडियंस को दिया जा रहा था, लेकिन फिर भी इंपॉर्टेंट डिपार्टमेंट्स जो थे वो अपने पास ही उन्होंने रखे थे. The 1919 Act did not give much exposure to the demand for responsible government of Indians. Everybody was disappointed due to this act, and Tilak criticized the act in the words, "This is neither Swaraj nor its foundation." So the Indians understood that if they have to subdue the British government, then the agitation needs to be more rigorous, and India got prepared for a new movement. Now about that new movement we'll talk in the next topic.
Please subscribe the channel and press bell icon to get notifications.
So my dear ones, this is all for today. Thank you very much. Stay home, stay safe, take care.